First off, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for spending some time with us. I tried not to turn this into a normal panel. It's going to be a little bit more of a fireside chat, a little conversational. I want to start it off because I want to figure out who's in the audience. How many of you are developers looking for funding? Raise your hands. Great. Any investors, publishers in the room? Anybody brave enough to admit it?
We won't be too hard on you.
All right, so we're going to try to keep it fun and light. We may stop in the middle to answer any questions in case people have them. We may not. We may wait till the end. But please don't be shy if you have something really important. But we will ask you to step up to the microphone up here so we can hear you. Everybody in here, this is being recorded. It will end up on YouTube shortly. So if I swear too much, we'll get bleeped out. But please keep that in mind. So if you're a little camera shy or afraid, probably don't want to step up to the mic. I've got two great guests, so I'm going to shut up for a minute and we're going to have some little fun. I'm going to start the best way to start. Let's talk about your company and founding story. So Jenny, I'm going to start with you. A little bit about your company, a little bit your founding story, and we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, so excited to be here. I'm Jenny, CEO and founder of Talofa Games, and I've been building games since I was 12, so this is truly what I love. And I started as an indie dev, so I learned how to code, market, draw badly, and all of those combined turned into a game. So I posted about 100 Flash games from the ages of 12 to 18 online, and all solo dev. I didn't have any friends in a lot of time. So out of those 110, I ended up putting up on the app stores, and those somehow, by some miracle, got 10 million downloads, ended up paying for college. And at that point, I thought I wanted to be a game studio head or do something in games forever, because I finally found that thing that I thought I didn't realize I was good at. So from there, I actually ended up getting recruited to MIT to run cross country and track, and they just happened to have a game dev program too. So I did computer science at MIT, had this running thing going on, had my gaming thing going on, and then right when I was about to decide whether or not what I wanted to do post-college, just happened that Niantic had this developer contest. They were looking for things in the fitness gaming space, so we ended up applying to that. Tiny team. I actually did it with my dad. So it was me and my dad. I was his boss. And then the two of us ended up winning the whole thing. We got $300,000, largest number I've ever seen in my life. And that gave us the confidence to start Talofa. So started there. We'll dig more into it, but from there we actually had a publisher deal come through, fell through, had to pivot to equity funding. We've raised $6.3 million to date, so we were able to do that successfully, but now we're a studio around the mission of making players more physically, mentally fit through games. So that's it is who I am, it's my identity, and I love it, but this whole process has not been smooth, so I'm very excited to share more about that and kind of how we got here. So thanks for having me.
So Tony, your turn, we'll get it, and then we'll dig in a little bit deeper. So for those of you who aren't really aware, the idea of switching from project financing to actually equity financing is a bit of a unicorn, and I didn't even find this part out until a couple days ago, but we'll dig into that a little bit more. But so you have a very interesting origin story, Tony, so let's talk about this too.
Interesting would be the word. Hi everyone, I'm Tony. I'm the studio head at Summitsphere. It's a studio that I formed myself. I feel very fortunate to be able to say that today. I also want to say thanks to Justin for having me in Xsolla, and thank you everyone for coming. I have been making games since I was 9 years old. That feels weird to say, but most of them were not very good. I met my best friend and development partner on a Crash Bandicoot forum way back when I was, again, 9 years old. I was obsessed with Crash Bandicoot.
Let's be clear, that was not that long ago.
It was long ago for me, relative, right? But we met all that time ago, and I'm sure many of you are probably looking at me like I'm crazy, but it was a long time ago for me, relatively. We met, we started making games together because that's what we did. Usually they were pretty bad Crash Bandicoot fan games. Thankfully, they've been lost to time, but the experience is here, the memories are here. And this is, really just kind of condensing this way down, but we just did that for a really, really long time. Nearly, it's going to have been 20 years that we've been making games together. And we had a lot of different journeys. I went into music for a while, but games were always a passion of mine, above everything. And in 2018, after we'd been doing that for a while making these silly little games together, JB and I decided, well, what if we did this professionally? We've been doing this long enough. We've been cramming in Game Maker. That's a professional engine now. So we started putting together game pitches professionally. And we worked on a pitch for a few months. And this was around the time that E3 still existed. And so I got myself a plane ticket to sunny Los Angeles and went over to E3 in 2019. And I walked over to the Devolver lot with my pitch, no appointment. I went up to the head of Devolver at the time, Mike Wilson. And I said,
Was he sober?
No, he was not. And I said to him, hey, Mike, you don't know me, but I'm Tony, and I've got your next game you're going to sign right here. So he looked at me, blank stare, and he said, well, okay, I don't do that shit, but here's my green light guy, you can talk to him. And so I got out my crappy old computer, showed him the game. I had a controller that didn't work. I stuttered and stammered through my build, and he played through it, and he said, wow, let's talk. And I went home, and we were really excited, and then Devolver didn't sign my game. Thankfully, there was more to the story, but we were desperate for funding, and so we pitched to pretty much every publisher that existed at the time, every publisher, every fund. They all turned us down. But there was one guy that I met on that lot, and he was a pretty hyper guy, and he said, Tony, I'm going through a really bad time right now, but I took out a bank loan, and I'm starting a publisher, and I want you to be a part of it. And I said, okay, so you want to sign at the time, I had a really cool Battletoads-esque beat-em-up game. They were these big, sexy farm animals. We called them the Harm Yarders. And I said, all right, you want to sign that game? We were looking for about 300 grand at the time. And he said, no. You made a really cool Game Jam game, which was it was like a Game Boy sort of thing. Like it was in Game Boy restrictions. Shout out to GB Jam. I'm sure someone in here has been a part of that. It was a game called Anton Ball. And he said, I want you to make a deluxe version of that. And I said, okay, for how much? $16,000. I don't know if anyone here can live off of $16,000 for a year of development, but if you can, kudos to you. I said, okay, I need to make a game, so sure. And we did that, and it came out, and it did pretty okay for a breakout platformer. I mean, it was a literal breakout platformer. Fast forward to today, and we made Anton Blast. That's what we're most known for. And that has done considerably better for us. We had brought that to Kickstarter. That did quite well, and then we partnered up with Joystick Ventures to get through the rest of it. We can get into the nitty-gritty of that later.
Well, we'll skip that because I don't want to go too deep because I think the audience is probably going to really want to find out how you figured out how to get money.
Yes.
So let's talk about we'll go to Tony first. When did you actually get that funding from Joystick? Because everybody knows how difficult it is to get money right now. If anybody's got an easy path to getting money, please raise your hand. I'll see you after the event. Let's talk about that though. When did you actually get that money from Joystick? What year was it? And I'm using this for reference because we all know things were crazy between 2020 and 2022.
Yep.
And then money has kind of dried up since. So let's talk about this.
Okay, so a little bit of background. Anton Blast was sort of like our expansion of Anton Ball, right? We did Anton Ball. It was kind of a WarioWare looking take on Mario Bros meets Breakout. Not going to go into details on that, but it was cheap. But it did pretty well, and people were excited about it. So we thought, all right, on to the next one. I always wanted to make a Wario Land kind of game, right? I don't want to call it a passion project, but it was something I was excited about. So we put together a proposal, and we brought that to, at the time, the publisher that had supported Anton Ball. And they said, cool, but it's too expensive for the kind of game that it was. The money that we were asking for was in the low six-figure range. And we had a team of, at the time, 8 people. And it was a development cycle of 2 years. So you do the math, low 6 figures for that many people, not going to work. We then started bringing it to other publishers. In total, we brought it to, I believe, over 40 different publishers, right? Every single one of them said no. Some of them strung us along for a while. They were like, maybe we can do it. Maybe there's something here. But the reality is, at the time, we were pitching a 2D pixel platformer, right? How many of you are developing those or have seen those? Okay, so not too many. At the time, this used to be really common. Everyone was making that. Everyone was making Celeste.
Every student team was making them.
Every student team, right? Like that's the first thing you make a game maker, right? So at the time, no one was really excited about it, but we knew we had something great. We knew we were making the 2D platformer that everyone would be really excited about. I'm not usually that self-aggrandizing, but I had to be for the pitch. So there came a point where we realized, well, we're going to be screwed if we don't get paid soon. We were running out of money and fast. Our previous publisher also had trouble paying us, so that contributed to the urgency. And from that point on, we decided, all right, let's go to Kickstarter, right? You know, indie success story. We saw Shovel Knight. We got really excited by that. They got $75,000. That should be, it's not going to be enough to make it, but it should be enough to get excitement. We did that, brought us about double what we asked for. We asked for $75,000. We got, I think, just under $150K. At that point, that was when publishers started reaching out to us. Many of the same people who had turned us down were emailing us saying, let's talk. And so immediately, the whole thing comes back to people will want to invest in you if you can prove that you're a success. So we had started the pitching process in late 2021. We did not get funding until early 2023.
So I want to emphasize that, right? So they started that. It's almost 2 years till they got funding from Jenny. But I also want to emphasize the path was not normal, and there is no normal path. Anybody who's trying to tell you there's a formula to getting funding is full of it. And the other thing I want to emphasize here is that you're going to hear a lot of double talk from publishers in particular. They don't want you to announce your game. They don't want you to promote your game, but they're going to tell you they want a vertical slice and they want to prove you have a community and an audience. I don't know how you do that without promoting or announcing your game.
Yep.
So go into it assuming you're not going to get funding and do everything possible to build it, and they will come. The minute they think there's money there, they'll all come running and you'll get a better deal. I want to go back to you, Jenny, now. So you started with project financing, went away. How do you decide to pivot and keep the company afloat and go get equity funding? Because it is a unicorn. I've been doing this for a really long time, and it's super rare. So let's talk a little bit about it.
I'm very inspired by Tony's story too. I wish our project financing continued, but somehow it disappeared. And the story there is that pretty much overnight, I had to let go half my team. So I had a group of 20 people, and kind of the day it dried up, we had to let go of, I think, 9 people then. So it was like the saddest day of my life at age 22. I was like, I guess it's over. Got the biggest chance. So I was like a young, kind of up and coming. Well, how I felt was like, I got the biggest chance of my life. It's now gone. My whole team was telling each other like, it's over. I think I know some of my teammates were like, this is the end of Talofa. Like, it was a good ride. We had 3 months of funding, and at that point, I was pretty depressed. I was like, I put all of my like life and soul into this project, and the fact that it just kind of overnight disappeared, I was like, how do I fall in love again? It's like you go through the deepest heartbreak for your baby. And at that point, I just happened. This is all, like, so much of this is luck, like being in the right place, right time. I was teaching a fitness class called Abs with Jenny. It was a 5-minute Zoom class. It was really silly. It was like over the pandemic. This was 2021. I just got like a couple of my friends over Zoom. We do abs, and that went from like a thing with my 15 friends to something with 800 different people from different walks of life. And it just so happened, like when my project financing ran out, and then like random people started adding friends, and one of those people ended up being an investor who came to Abs with Jenny, and they were like, oh, like let's chat after Abs with Jenny, and that ended up like I was just talking about like how I was really passionate about both fitness and games. Like I did this fitness instruction thing. I made games, and they were like, you seem really cool. And that was, I didn't realize it was a pitch. Anytime I was like, I guess that was a pitch when I talked to an investor. I didn't realize it. And I ended up after that, I thought like, oh, I talked to one investor. I should talk to more. So similar to Tony, I pitched about 40 different investors. I was trying to figure out how to spin my project into a VC level deal, and they're not expecting like hundreds of thousands of dollars of return. They want billions. Like they want you to say like, this is going to be $1 billion opportunity. And I just didn't have the I couldn't understand how to sell that confidently. I felt like a liar. Like I was truly like, how do I tell you this is $1 billion opportunity when all I wanted to do was build my indie game? So that to me was like the biggest shift of like, how do I convince myself I am a $1 billion opportunity? And I actually ended up getting a no from every single person I pitched with that, like, I'm trying to like pretend to be somebody I'm not. And the only person that said yes was that investor I accidentally pitched after an Absogeny. So our very, very first check from a VC was from a very random source. And I'd say like after that point, I realized, and we can probably go into strategy later, that this identity I built up of being like a fitness person and a gaming, like somebody who'd made games for a long time, was the story that VCs loved. Kind of this unique angle. And like even at GDC, excuse me, bless you. But yeah, even at like GDC and such, like I'll wear things like, this is like a 12-pound weighted vest. Like it's like I wear it all day just because like this is my identity, like this is who I am. And in the world of equity funding, I feel like being a little weird, a little odd, but being still authentically you like goes a long way. And that like story of getting the first check, that was like a $600K check from Absogeny, totally random side thing I did, was kind of the in to then getting the rest of it, the 6.3 later. Yeah.
So real quick, how many of you actually even understand the difference between equity financing or a VC and project financing? Or just think all money is created equal? So I understand when you're desperate for money, it seems like it's all created equal. Jenny brought up a really good point here. The big difference is project financing, usually what publishers do, is very much interested in your game, and they only care about your studio in so much as you can ship the game and you're building a business. VCs want an exit, and it's usually within 5 to 10 years and multiples of 10 to 20 times their investment or more. They are investing in your ability to survive chaos, rebuild, restructure, make, and they own a piece of your soul. So it's a slightly different, you can say publishers try to own your soul, but they certainly don't own your studio. In this case, they have a piece, they end up on the board, all kinds of stuff. We don't need to go down on the rabbit hole, but I do suggest you all do a little bit of research on the difference, and I'm gonna say this, most indie developers are not in a position to take equity financing. She had a story that was compelling, and those people invest in great stories and leaders that can pivot and make changes. And it's really tough to do that as a startup indie. That money is dried up right now. It's not that it can't be done. You will kiss a lot of frogs. Let's put it that way. So speaking of kissing frogs, we're gonna go to some hot takes real quick. Uh-oh. We're gonna skip around a little. So how many of you wanna hear some horror stories about what it was like to pitch and some really bad responses? Anybody? You've got a great one, so let's talk. You got a couple, actually.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have two. So I'll just share those two to start, and then I'll toss to Tony.
Uh-oh.
I'd say, yeah, the first is like when I was very early on. It was like one of my very, very first pitches at GDC. So I was meeting somebody outside of Pete's Coffee on 70s. It's like 773 Market, so it's still around. But I remember sitting at a chair, and the person, somebody with money, an investor type person, was on the other side, and I was like pitching this vision. I was like, this was $1 billion opportunity. I'm like, I'd also say like having fitness and games together helps us with the equity side because it's not pure games. Like you'll hear that a lot, that like pure gaming studios are hard to invest in. So that's why the fitness angle I pushed a lot, and like why I try to be more like a fitness person. But like I was telling this vision, I was like so excited, and I was like young, I was like 23 at the time, and this person just like listened to it all. And I at the time was like pretty afraid of investors, intimidated even. I was like, these are people who decide my life. Like my whole life's direction can be like they can see it, they know what's going on. And this person just said like, Jenny, I can see the future, like after hearing everything you said, and I know that you're gonna fail.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness. Like I was just like, how can you tell me that I'm like impressionable, I'm so young? I'm like, I was like about to cry at that point probably. And just like they just like kind of like this weight, I was like sinking down. I was like, they're right. Like I am gonna fail. Like why, like there's only a 99.9% of startups fail. Like who am I to think that I'm the 0.01 to succeed or 0.1 to succeed? So that point just kind of, And this guy was trying to convince me to quit my startup. Like he was like, I want to save you the pain. Like I want to help you live a better, happier life. And I think I understood that, but it was just this like really soul-crushing thing. I think he said the quiet part out loud. Maybe not all investors are so honest, maybe. So that was one that like really sticks out, and now we're actually good friends. Like he is a friend, but at the moment I like was truly hurt. And the second story is just one that is a complete opposite. It's like the opposite of like somebody saying something mean like that is like they just don't care. So I had a meeting with an investor where they were late, and then when I was meeting with them, it was like in one of the hotel lobbies, and then the entire time they're on their phone. They're actually just like actively replying to emails, and also on their calendar moving meetings around as I was telling them stuff, and I knew nothing I was saying was entering their ear, but because of who they were, I just kept pitching, like kept going anyways, but it was this like soul-crushing thing of like, they literally don't care about me at all. Like I'm like less than a person, my studio doesn't matter. Like again, like it's kind of like reinforcing this feeling of like, if I'm not worth their time, maybe it's not worth it at all. So those two experiences like to me are formative because I think about them now, like how I see kind of funding now, and I'm like, I feel so sorry for the person I was then to like put so much emphasis on how they thought about me reflecting on how I felt about my company.
And yourself, right?
Yeah, and myself, yeah.
So by the way, when I'm looking at my phone, it's not that I'm paying attention. I'm old and senile, and I need to remember some of the questions. So Tony, why don't you talk a little bit about like some of your bad experiences?
Sure.
So one of the things I'm big on is we all look at the huge successes. Everybody's pointing to Balatro or Dave the Diver or Vampire Survivors as these North Stars and making clones. Success is a moment in time, and the minute one of those people is successful, it's gone. And if you're chasing that, by the time you ship, it's 2 or 3 years later. What's universal, and I get all of us have been through it, our failures and the things that made us fail are almost always the same in a different story. So while I encourage you to look at what people have done to be successful, look at other people in your genre that failed. Those are probably going to be universal, and you'll probably learn more and quicker from those. I was sitting with the guys from Vampire Survivors at the DICE Awards, and we literally asked them. They admitted they have no clue how they got so lucky and what they did. And luck is not much of a business plan, and it's certainly hard to invest in. So remember that. Tony, let's hear this.
Okay, so I've got a few stories. One of them is pretty funny. Actually, I think both of these are pretty cartoonish, but that's usually just been the way that our studio's gone. So I'll start with the shorter one. This was during the time we were still pitching for Anton Blast. After Anton Ball, it was called Anton Ball Deluxe, that was the remake. Anton Ball Deluxe had already come out, and at the time I'd made the mistake of pitching a unique deck to every publisher. Like, I'm sure everyone here has spent an inordinate amount of time fleshing out their perfect deck. I'm sure you've got like your romantic partner that you want to work with, right? That was every partner for us at the time. We were trying to figure out, all right, out of these 40 people we're publishing with, they're probably all great. You know, we were very bright-eyed at the time. Now I'm jaded.
Jaded at 20-something?
Don't remind me.
Just wait.
Just wait. But so, like I said, I had spent an inordinate amount of time working on these decks and trying to make, trying to be perfect. And there was one, I'm trying my best to not name names, Gesundheit.
No, you go ahead.
No, we're not doing that. Bless their souls, don't speak ill of the dead. But there was one that I had pitched for, and I had written a pretty lengthy email, and that's just the worst feeling, right? Cold calling someone. I'd written a pretty lengthy email. Here's why I think Anton Blast would be a great fit for such and such games. And they got back to me about 5 weeks later, right? I'm waiting by the phone. And they get back to me and they say, well, I had a review of your deck and I just don't think Anton Ball Deluxe would be a great fit for us. That wasn't the game I pitched you, man. That was not the game that I pitched. That's been out for 2 years. So I actually, at the time, I was pretty soft-spoken, but I broke my rule. Now it's very different. I'm pretty brash now. But at the time, I didn't want to be mean. I just wrote back to him and I said, it's not the game we pitched you. I'm retracting my offer. Sorry. Hope you have a good time doing whatever else you're doing. But the other one, the other story I've got is a little more, it's still quite cartoonish, but it was painful. At the time, we were looking for money still. Anton Blast hadn't taken off. We had Kickstarter, but we hadn't signed anything else yet. So we were kind of, at the time, functioning as a hired gun, taking on other work, trying to find contract work. And there was an IP I really liked. There's a game I really liked growing up. And we had a platformer engine already. It was a Sega Genesis game, really cartoony. You know, our engine, our pipeline was already built to deal with that. So we figured, well, what if we pitched a remake, right? That would be really exciting. You know, this is at the time when that was a little less trite than it is now. So I reached out to the IP holders, told them my plans, and they got back to me pretty quickly. So I remember telling JB how excited I was about that. You know, oh man, they want to talk to us. They like our idea. So we got on the phone with them, had a pitch meeting, explained how much it would cost. It wasn't very expensive at all. It was about $200,000, which was underselling ourselves, but we needed money. They told us it was too expensive. So we said, okay, how can we get this to be less expensive? They ghosted us for 6 months, got back to us 6 months later, and they said, okay, we'll take your budget, but can you remake the sequel too? We said, okay. And then we talked, and there were more decks. We need a prototype. We did all of it. We jumped through all the hoops. They ghosted us. 6 months pass, right? This time we have already signed Anton Blast with Joystick Ventures, but we still want to do this IP. It's still exciting. And we say, okay, any update? They get back to us and they say, we're right about to get you a contract. At this point, cumulatively, it has been close to 1.5 years. And we said, awesome, this is going to be a huge boon for us. They ghost us. And then I sit down with a good friend of mine. I'm not going to name names, but he's worked on a bunch of other properties, pretty high-profile stuff, Disney and the like. And we just had a get-together. He's been a little bit of a mentor for me, and I asked him, like, what's going on? And he told me what was going on, and he asked me, and I told him, yeah, we were pitching for this IP, and then they just ghosted us. And he said, oh, that's weird. We were pitching for that. I said, oh, yeah? Yeah, but, those guys that you were talking to, they sold the IP like 3 years ago. So this publisher, this legacy publisher, at the time they weren't well-renowned anymore, but they were like parading around that they had owned this property. They were trying to sell me a bridge they didn't own. I don't even know what they were doing.
So I have a question for you. All those people that said no, did that stuff, how many of them started reaching out to you after the game started being successful?
Oh, I mean, after Anton Blast. So after Anton Blast Kickstarter happened, I would say about half of the people that we reached out to emailed us, which was really funny because I'll be real, I started to be a dick. Because frankly, and this is something that I would really impart onto everyone still, if you didn't see the vision back then, why should I want to work with you now? So the people that I prioritized were the ones who were excited about it, but had pretty valid reasons for turning it down. We're not sure if this can make money. We like it, but we're not sure. Or maybe this doesn't fit right now. And that ended up being Joystick Ventures. They were really great to us, and they gave us a lot of creative freedom. And they were excited about it from the start. But the funny thing was, after Anton Blast came out and did really well, where we're talking 9s and 10s, and we're talking recoup in the first month. Not to be braggadocious, but like these numbers look good in the press, right? They look good to potential investors, funds. You don't pitch anymore at that point. You have publishers giving you their deck, and that's when you're in a good spot. But again, the problem is a lot of those people will still string you along.
So I'm gonna say one of the terms I'm gonna use for all of you. You're gonna get this a lot. I know, Jenny, you got this. I call it the long maybe.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because nobody ever wants to be the one to say no to something that goes on to be a hit. As somebody who's been a scout for a long time, the only time I ever got yelled at by my boss, and this was when I was at 505, was when they thought a competitor signed a game that I didn't bring to the company. And I got cussed out at GDC in front of a whole bunch of people publicly because my boss got in trouble with his boss. Turns out I did some investigation, and the game was only pitched to the publisher who took it because the developer and the publisher were friends. But I almost lost my job because my publisher thought that I didn't bring it in. So understanding the people on this side looking and scouting, most of them are really good people. They like games, but the number of people that actually sign off on any game is pretty big, and we have a credibility bar. If I bring in a game everybody hates, I lose credibility internally. If I bring in a game that everybody loves, even if we don't sign it, I gain credibility. So there's this corporate cover my ass thing that happens. So you will often get a long maybe. And the other thing, I'm gonna say this, and I'm sorry, Sally, please don't get mad at me for swearing. Investors are chicken shit. I can't say it any other way. I am one. We want to see other people in the pool. We want external third-party validation. Because if I bring it in and everybody else on my team hates it, I can go, but look at all these other people love it, so you must not understand. So I save myself my credibility in my career. So when you're talking to scouts and folks like me, understand the pressures we're under too. Put yourself in our shoes. We're still assholes, that's fine. But understand that there's a different set of pressures. So when you're pitching, try to understand what really matters to them, how they get bonused, how they get rewarded, how they get promoted. Try to build relationships with them even if they say no, because those same people are gonna end up in another company and might be able to say yes. Sally, how much time do we have?
Not a lot.
That's not much of an answer. We're flying through. I'm going to stop it here because we're going to run out of time. And
Sure.
there's like 500 more questions I want to ask both of you. Does anybody have questions for these two or anybody else? Anybody? Can you please step up to the mic? Go ahead.
Hi, so my question is for Tony as it relates to your Kickstarter. First of all, congratulations, like that's awesome to
Thank you.
to have a goal of 75 and hit 150. What do you attribute your Kickstarter success to? We're about to do a Kickstarter in June, and my feeling is similar that like we need to nail this. The Kickstarter is not about the money that we're going to bring in to help fund the studio. It's about getting recognized by investors for having an amazing Kickstarter campaign. So what was it that you did or how did you go about it to have such a successful campaign?
Well, first off, I want to say you have the absolute right approach to it. I'll try to keep this like expedited, but if you want, we can talk more after. But basically, we went in with a plan, which was we figured out, all right, who's going to be excited about this game? We knew what our target audience was, and so before we revealed the game with the Kickstarter, which is maybe not like traditional. But the whole reason we did it the way that we did was because we reached out to content creators, we reached out to press. At the time, press was like a little more prominent. Right now it's a little damaged, but still valuable. We reached out to people who we thought would be really excited about the game and who would be evangelists for it, and we gave them exclusive access. We gave them a build. We gave them a press kit to work off of, and we gave them an embargo, and we said, if you're excited about this, no pressure, but if you'd be willing to talk about it the day that we drop, that would really help. And I would say that's probably the number one contributor to how well the Kickstarter did, how much visibility it had. The second thing I would say, and these things kind of go in tandem, is the fact that we had a demo that went with it. That demo was the exact same vertical slice that we had shared with publishers, and it was a big contributor to people taking it seriously because there was the virality that came with it, right? Oh, people can go and play the Kickstarter demo. We had a Discord link in there. And so there were all these sort of sustaining loops that people could connect to, and everyone would kind of feed back into one another.
I'm actually really sorry. We're out of time. I think we're going to probably have to vacate the room quickly. I think those of you can stay around. We'll go outside, and they might kick us down. We're happy to answer some questions.
Oh my God.
I know, it flew by. I'm sorry, folks.
It went
Thank
by
you.
so fast.